Hi everyone, really lovely to see you. I think we're live. Just quickly checking if everything works, if my sound is on, all these little things, and I think that's the case. So thank you so much for joining in. This is my weekly live session on YouTube. Welcome, thank you so much for being here. I'm really looking forward to doing some sketchbooking with you. So before we get started, I will just do a little bit of like an introduction about who I am. I know that some of you might know me already, some of you might not. This might be the first time you're drawing with me. So I'll do a little introduction and I'll talk you through the materials that I'm going to use. And then after that, we're going to just dive straight into the sketching session and have a lot of fun. So you can see I put the Inktober prompt list up. We are going to use that list as inspiration. I'll just put it up for the start of the session. I'll take it away in a moment. Today is the 5th of October, so we're going to use prompt 5, which is map. If you want to draw something else, you can absolutely do that. So you can either draw along with me or draw something else, take your inspiration from something else, or work on a project of your own. Either way is absolutely fine. So this is what I'm going to do. My name is Irene. I am an artist, an illustrator, and I'm based in Cambridgeshire in the UK, just outside of London. So that is sort of where I teach my art classes. If I'd have any in-person event, it's either in London or in Cambridge or sort of in that area. And I just started to occupy a new studio space in Cambridge, so I'm spending a lot of time there. And I also work from my studio at home, which is where I am now. This is my art studio at home that I use for my online classes and my online events. I also host a creative community. We have a lot of members already. It's a really lovely place, and we come together on Zoom to do art classes like a few times a month. The next one is on Saturday and we're painting in watercolors. So if anyone wants to join in with that, Saturday is the next live session. So this is a really good time to join if you're curious. And I host live sessions on YouTube as well. So all of that said, I am going to work in my sketchbook today. So this is a sketchbook I've used a lot for these YouTube live sessions. You might have seen it pop by a few times. It's almost full. It is a Sea White of Brighton sketchbook, which is quite an affordable sketchbook, I think, especially considering how many pages it has. And I really like the paper for sketching and drawing and using my ink pens, which I'm going to do today. I don't think it's very great for watercolors, but that's also not what it is meant for. So it's really meant as a sketchbook for dry mediums, and that is what I'm using it for. So my Sea White of Brighton sketchbook. I have a whole selection here of different ink pens. I have some of these Micron fine liners, which are waterproof, which I will likely use today. I also have some Faber-Castell pens, some fine liners, which are also waterproof in different sizes. I have some more here, but these are the main ones. I have a fountain pen with ink in it, which is not waterproof, but we're not using any water today, so it doesn't really matter for now. And I have some other pens and pencils here as well, but these are the main ones that I'm going to use today, I think. So I'll put those to the side for a moment. And as I said, we are going to use the Inktober prompt list for today's drawing. And if you're not familiar with Inktober, I already put a list to the main sort of Inktober website in the chat. So if you're curious about Inktober, you can find it there. It is an art challenge that has been running for years and years. I have participated a few times this year. I'm not doing all the prompts because I just don't have the time for it. I have a lot of other things going on at the moment, so I cannot make this my priority at the moment. But it's really lovely if you want to make drawing a daily habit. I would really recommend you check it out. So every day of the month has a different prompt, and people are drawing along and creating lots of art and then sharing the art based on those prompts online. And it's really wonderful to see all the different art that everyone is making. Some people make really huge, like elaborate drawings, and some people keep it really simple. And each of all of those options is fantastic. It's really lovely. I would really recommend checking it out if you're not familiar with this art challenge. So, there we go. So, the drawing that we are going to make today is on the prompt map. And I was thinking about this a bit earlier. I'm not going to use any references. I'm just going to draw from my imagination. And I have a bit of an idea of what I want to draw. You are very welcome to use reference photos if you want to. The challenge is very open. You're very welcome to use references if you want to. I just decided for today to not do that. So I'm going to take away the photo because we know what the reference is. We don't need to see it. So there we go. And then you can see my sketchbook a little bit better. I was planning to do a few quick sketches for composition on this page and then make my final drawing on the other side. So that's what I'm going to do. And the idea that I had for this prompt was really simple. I'm going to take a really literal, just two hands holding a map. So that is a really literal interpretation of this prompt. You will see that if you look online and you see what other people have used, like what they have created based on these prompts, that some people take things really, really literal and some people really go like really interpret it really wide. And I'm going to go for quite a literal interpretation today. So let me just quickly move my microphone a little bit. So it gives me a bit more space to move. Also, if anyone has any questions, pop them in the chat. I can see them. Always love to hear from you if you just want to say hi or if you have a question. Or let me know where you're from. I know a lot of people from the States join in, a lot of people from the UK. So if you want to, let me know. I'm always happy to hear from you. So my plan was two hands holding a map, and I don't have any references apart from my own hands. So that is what I'm going to do. And I was sort of thinking of drawing the final sort of drawing in a circle. So if I'm going to make a few sketches just for composition, so these are just loose, free sketches. I'm using a ballpoint pen, no fine details. I was thinking of doing a circle. So, see, there we go. These are not finished art pieces. We're just doodling at the moment to generate some ideas. So, a hand on this side. So if I use my hand here, you can see, so you can sort of see my hand. If I hold it still like that, we can sort of use that as a reference. If you've never made a drawing of your own hand before, it is quite tricky. So maybe roughly like that. It doesn't have to be perfect. This is just an initial sketch. So there might be another finger here. So that sort of looks like a hand, doesn't it? A bit of a claw, but that's okay. So when you draw a hand, don't forget this sort of rounded bit here. So you can do your sketch in your sketchbook, or perhaps if you prefer, you can do a sketch in on a separate bit of paper if you have something lying around. The less expensive the better sometimes. So use an old envelope or corner of a newspaper, or maybe some packaging material if you have like a bit of cardboard or something. If you feel a bit precious about drawing, using really like flexible cheap materials are a really great way of loosening up and taking away that pressure. So this is an initial one, and now for this hand I'm sort of going to do the same, so maybe like that. As I'm drawing with right, I need to lift my hand a few times. So, yeah, so that feels about right. Actually quite like that shape, we're keeping it really simple. So maybe I will try again. There we go. So I like that side. I think this one is a bit too complicated, like a bit too much movement. I'm going to try and keep it simple. So thumb. See? There we go. We have a little hand. And I'm quite used to drawing hands and feet and like facial expressions and things like that. But if you're new to it, just experiment a little bit. If you want to draw the same subject as I am, if you want to draw a map in a different way, you can absolutely do that, of course. So I'm just going to see if I can copy that to this side. So, like that. And I know I have quite a high tempo, I go quite fast. If you need a bit more time, make sure you take that time. I sort of do it on purpose because I want to let go of that perfectionism and just quickly sketch and loosen up. So not focus too much on getting things perfect, but just to have a bit of fun. There we go. I'm just quickly checking the chat. No one has any questions. Wonderful. Well, if you do, let me know. I'm just using a ballpoint pen at the moment. So I like this composition, keeping the hands really simple. Just holding, it's almost like holding a globe, isn't it? I wasn't really planning to do that. Maybe I'll keep it a bit like this. So then let's add in some land. If this is sort of the Americas, so it's a bit of a Eurocentric perspective, this way of drawing, but that's okay. That's how I have learned to read a map, is with Europe sort of in the middle. So, of course, you can also make the map up a little bit. You don't have to use the earth as we know it. You can change things. So, I think this is quite a nice little reference for my main picture. Another option is using like a scroll. So that's another idea. I'm just generating ideas at the moment, and then having a hand sort of hold that like this. Maybe you cannot see the thumb here if the scroll is going through that. And then having like a map here. Maybe there's a treasure somewhere. Some mountains. See? That's another idea that I think would look quite nice. That was actually my original idea, because then I started with the circle. I liked the globe idea as well. Maybe I'll go for this one. Stick with my original idea. So we've sketched out a few ideas. Maybe you're also sketching with me, maybe you're just watching, which either way is fine, of course. Welcome, and thanks for joining. I'm drinking turmeric tea, which is very nice. I like it a lot. So, deep breath. Make sure you relax a little bit, relax your shoulders. I think I'm ready to start on this side. So this is how I quickly come up with some ideas, by doing somewhat like a little brain dump, just idea generation. So that's how I like to work. Don't pause too long to think about things, but just quickly put some things on the paper, and then slowly the ideas will start generating. So I'm going for this one. I think the hand's a little bit bigger, a bit more like this one. So, and this one as well, a little bit bigger. So I think the hands are sort of all the way on the side, and then the map is sort of that in the middle, sort of fixes, sort of the hands need to frame the map in my vision. There we go. It is up to you if you want to make a sketch with a sketch pencil first. So my camera should come back in a sec. There we go. Sometimes the lens turns off for a moment. You can make a little sketch with a sketch pencil if you want. It's also okay to go straight in with ink. It's up to you. I'm making a little sketch, but I'm keeping it very simple. So just here for the map. So I want that top to be a little bit wider. There we go. And the hands are roughly going to be here. So when you sketch a hand, doing that circle here for that sort of rounded area with the thumb makes a big difference. So I'd recommend doing that to sort of keep the space between the fingers and the thumb to make that work. I would recommend adding in that circle. So I'm not going for hyper realistic hands here, just a bit of a rough sort of representation. So maybe the map would go over the fingers at the top. There we go. This is going to be my sketch. So as you can see, I'm keeping it really simple. I'm not going into lots and lots of detail because I don't want to focus. I don't want to get dragged into the sketching phase and focus on the details too much. There we go. So I'm going to go straight in with ink because we're doing an Inktober drawing. We are drawing in ink. The pen that I'm going to start with is, see if I have a medium-sized one. This one is an 8mm. So if you use any fine liners, they come in lots of different sizes. This one is the smallest one that I have, which is 0.005. So it's half millimeter. Gives very fine lines. This is sort of a medium one, which is 8mm. And I have some much bigger pens as well, but I think 8 is a really good size to start with. So, everyone's a bit shy today. No one said hi yet in the chat, unless maybe there's a delay. This is possible. Which is okay. It's okay to be a bit shy. So I'm just going to outline these shapes first. That's how I like to work. So, if you want to look back at your hand and make things a bit more precise, you can do that. So I'm quite happy for the drawing to be a bit more sort of illustrative rather than realistic. So I also don't want the edge of the map to be too straight, because this is like an old parchment. In my imagination anyway, because it can be any way you want. So I'm sort of making the edge a bit frayed, thinking that it could look a bit more old. Actually, I'm going to put the fingers in front. See, there we go. We start to have a little bit of a drawing already. putting in some extra fingers to sort of go behind the paper. And I also want to add in that circular shape, and I'm going to do the same, having it a bit frayed, not too straight. So sometimes having things a bit wonky on purpose makes your life a bit easier, because if you want to create a perfect circle and then it's not perfect, that immediately sort of ruins the effect. So you need to work really precise. If you sort of know that you want to have, you're not really good at making really perfect circles, it's better to have it a bit of a frayed edge, because that way it feels more natural. Florencia from Argentina. That's really wonderful. I love to go to Argentina one day. It's on my list to travel to the south of the Americas. So I'm just using my eraser to take my sketch lines away, clean things up. So clean things up. I have traveled quite a lot, but I've never been to sort of that side of the world, to America or South America. I've only ever been to the sort of towards the east from here, so to Asia and Australia and Southeast Asia, China. Those directions I have been to, but not the other direction. So now we have a bit of a framework. I've made a sketch. I actually think it looks quite nice already, but I want to add detail and make it more, just slowly start finishing the drawing. I can see there's a bit of a delay, so I know that I am a bit further ahead than what you are watching. It looks like the stream is going well, so that is all right, but I'm aware of that. When you draw in ink, there is a lot of different ways to add texture and color to your drawing. So one thing is just to draw lines, what I've done so far. But something else that you can do is hatching. And hatching is adding lines in the same direction to an area to create a darker area. Oh yeah, I know hands are difficult, so I can see what you're saying, Carol. Don't worry too much. It's okay if it gets a little bit messy. We are doing this to push ourselves out of our comfort zone, and this is also why we do a few practice sketches to get used to that shape, and just to also simplify the shape a bit, because we're not looking at all these like little details that you have on hands. You know, you've got all these little lines and edges. We're just making a really simple shape for now. So I'm going to do a bit of hatching, and I think I'll just keep my page like this so you can see the whole paper. I'm just going to add lines. So all the way on the outside of the map. I want the background to be a little bit darker. So there we go. You can keep those straight lines. You can do that all the way on the background. I'm assuming that some of you are drawing the exact same thing as me. If you are, you can keep those lines all the way along the background, or you can make some like some twists in it, or make them a bit rounded. So for example, you can go straight all the way across, or maybe here we change the direction. Have a little bit of fun with it. This is just the background, there's no rules. So you can also make the background completely pure black. So I'm just making sure that I only add it to the background, not to the foreground. So, and what I'm hoping is that you can quickly see that will give a bit of darker color to that background. So even without adding any like if you paint, you do that whole surface in one color, but just by adding those lines, you can instantly make something stand out. It's a bit of a quick trick to do. So, there we go. So maybe from here we go like this again. This doesn't really represent anything. I just wanted to add a bit of color to that background. The closer those lines are together, the darker that area is going to look. So I'm just keeping my lines straight for now. You can also do this with curves, squiggles. I'm just keeping it really simple for now, just straight lines. So. And I did not prepare any of this, I just had a vague idea of hands holding a map. So I'm just executing this, using my imagination. So, you can see that sort of slowly starts to give a bit of shape to that. So, my pen is a little bit low on ink, which I actually quite like. I find the texture that you create with pens that are running out of ink really nice. But I might need to swap to another pen at some point. So the background is something that anyone can do. As long as you can hold a pen and you can draw a line, you can do that. You don't have to have like drawing skills like that go above or beyond that to add something like that in. And I speak to so many people who believe they cannot draw. And I think drawing is just a skill. The more you do it, the easier it gets. And as long as you can draw a line, you can learn to draw anything. And I know that that's, certain drawing skills take years to learn. I'm still on the path of learning as well. And that's okay, but just know that it is possible. Anyone can learn it and anyone can get better at drawing. Same with singing, or there's so many different skills that anyone can learn. As long as you have a voice, you can sing. If you can draw a line, you can draw an artwork. So let's focus on the map. I think I'm going to make like an imaginary treasure map. So I'm not going to do the sort of realistic earth. I'm going to make a bit of a treasure map. I'm just going to doodle. I'm just going to make it up. Let's zoom in a little bit. There we go. I also find it quite fun if I see artwork for myself from a few years ago, that how much I've learned and how far I've come. And I'd really recommend to sometimes have a look at something that you've made a long time ago, because sometimes you can really surprise yourself, because you forget where you were a little while ago. Sometimes it's easy to sort of focus on where you are now and forget how far you've come. So I'm making a bit of a path, like a route. So I don't know if you sort of ever made a treasure map. I'm just making it up. The thing I was going to talk about, which I sort of forgot a little bit, was is failure, and the sort of journey that I have gone through, and all the things that I failed at, and how they sort of made me to where I am now. And the reason I wanted to talk about that is because I think we don't talk about that enough. And I did a workshop yesterday. I joined a new community, Together Culture in Cambridge, where my art studio is, and that the CV of Failure writing workshop is one of them. So I did that yesterday. And I did think it was so interesting because very often we only celebrate the successes we have in our lives. And we forget that people go through failures. And the fear of failure can really hold us back. So to normalize failure and to know that everyone is going through different things can really help sort of opening up your creativity and make you more daring and more brave. And it's okay to fail at things. Also, very often we think that we failed at something, but in reality, it's just a stepping stone towards something else. So that's another thing that I think is really interesting to sort of realize that things can feel really permanent, but in reality, the journey is not over. So, yeah, I thought that was a really interesting thing. Hey, really lovely to meet you. I don't know if you say Gao or Gu. Yeah, lovely to meet you. I am very well. Thank you so much for joining today. So we are very much in the middle of our drawing. We're doing this Inktober drawing today. And let's carry on. Oh yeah, so failure. So one of the things that I failed at, because we wrote that CV of failure, is that I applied to go to art school twice after my high school, which is now feels like a really long time ago, which also, I think time often sort of heals the pain, or, because it's only a small part of a much bigger journey. But at the time, the fact that I got rejected from art school was such a big thing for me. And it stopped me making art for such a long time. So I think that's sort of the failure part, the fact that I didn't create any art after that it sort of stumped me, and that I felt like, oh, my art's not good enough, what's the point? Now I think, oh, that's so sad. But back then, that's how it felt. And I studied law, and I worked in a really corporate sort of environment for quite a few years. And then 4 years ago, I quit my job and I started making some musings, and I started to run all these art classes, and I started to work as an illustrator, and slowly, that part became bigger and bigger. And now I am, this is my full-time job, and I've never been to art school. And it just, I just find it really interesting. And I think those sort of things need to be talked about, and not just in the art community. There's all sorts of different events or things that we shouldn't be embarrassed about it. We can just talk about it and share our experience. And then I don't know, I'm a bit on a ramble here. I realize that sometimes when a gatekeeper like art school or a gallery, or if you submit your art for something, if you get rejected, it can feel like such a massive thing. So I'm just adding in a few sort of little bits and pieces. So maybe there's like a little hut here. So I'm just making this up. Just thinking of the sort of things that you'd find on a map. So maybe a village. So, what is my inspiration to pursue art? That's a hard question, because I have so many different inspirations. I was always creative. I've always loved making art when I was a kid and when I was younger, and then when I, sort of in those years when I studied law and I worked in sort of the corporate environment. I didn't make much art, so I sometimes painted a bit, but I was always a bit disappointed with what I made, and it wasn't a big thing for me. And then in, I think it was 2018, my grandmother passed away. And I was really close to her. I loved my grandma very much. And she was an artist, and she made so many beautiful paintings. And when she died, I took all her art materials home, so all her paints and her brushes and some of her sketchbooks, and I still have a lot of the art materials here. And I started using them because I was really going through a lot of grief, and I found it really hard to have to miss her. And I started to use her art materials to make art, and it made me feel really connected to her, and it made me feel really good to do that again. And yeah, that sort of led to making art more. And yeah, that's the reason why I'm an artist now. So the fact that I could do that, and how much I got so much joy out of it, and I wanted to share that. And I started making some musings to do mindful art classes, to share that feeling of, that creative flow with others. And yeah, now we are here years later, and that's how it goes. So I don't know if that answers your question. So my grandma is a big source of inspiration for me. So I just love drawing all sorts of things. I love the feeling of making art. I do ink drawings, paintings, I make large installations, I illustrate for books. I do maybe 2 or 3 books a year where I illustrate sort of children's books. I've never written a book, but this is something I would love to do one day. Oh, you're very welcome. So I'm just adding lots of little things to the map. So I just love trying out art materials and painting and drawing, and I basically use everything that I can lay my hands on. I don't think I have a really specific style. I think finding your art style is a bit overrated. People are always like, oh, how do you find your style? And then, you have to... The reason people want to have a really specific style is because that's what social media likes. Social media likes it if you post things on Instagram and everything looks the same, because then they know who to promote that art to. But in reality, that's not who we are as humans. So I like to make lots of different things, and that's what I do. I think the more you put yourself out there and you share your art, the bigger the chances that someone will ask you to make something for them, and then people start paying you for it, and all of that takes time, but slowly and steadily. Yeah, that's how it went for me anyway. So I've done everything in one pen so far. I've not used any different pens, but there is a big benefit to using different size pens if you have some. So I use this size 8 so far, which is a fairly fine liner. You can see my lines are quite fine. But if you do, for example, a landscape or something, having a finer pen, so this is that really fine 005 one, you can use that to add like much finer details to the drawing. So for example, here on the hand, if I want to add in some like little wrinkles, I would rather do that with a really fine pen to have that really, really soft. I can absolutely add a tree in there. Where shall I add it? Maybe here in the middle. There's a bit of space there. Shall I zoom in a bit for that? A tree. So I'm going to use this fine pen for that, and I'm going to do a really sort of simple shaped tree. So I'm starting with the stem. I don't have to sketch it out. I'm just going over this line. So I'm starting with the big branches. See, there we go. If I think you can see that okay. And then I decide where the leaves are going to go. So there we go. So you can see that square that was already in there. We're just leaving that in. And I will just slowly color that background in a bit more. So I'm using that hatching technique that I used earlier for that background to add a bit of shadow to those leaves. So these lines are significantly finer than the ones that we just added to the background. So see, there we go. You say you were very close to your grandmother. That sounds like she has passed away as well, so I'm really sorry to hear that, but it's lovely to have great memories of your grandparents, I think. So I'm glad to hear that you were very close to her. I think often the relationship to grandparents can be sometimes even closer than to a parent, or it's a very different relationship, isn't it? Because my grandmother did not raise me, but I did spend a lot of time with her. I always used to stay over for sleepovers, but not just for one night. I used to stay there for 2 weeks or 3 weeks for the whole, for the summer holidays. And then my grandma always used to say, "Oh, 1 week is not enough. She needs to stay for at least 2 weeks." So I used to stay there a lot, and that's yeah. I just loved that. I really loved staying with her. She used to read a lot of books to me and things like that. So, I'm just seeing people sharing some messages. Thank you so much for doing so. I also saw that someone said that they loved me, and that is very kind of you. That's always nice to hear. Even though it is a bit strange to hear from a stranger, but thank you, that's really nice. Still appreciate it, if it's meant with the right intentions. So, there we go. So, a little tree. So you can see with a finer pen, you can add in more fine details than you can with a slightly bigger pen. And I know that is common sense, a really big brush gives really big stripes, a really small brush gives really small stripes, and the same for pens. A really big pen gives really rough pens and gives really rough stripes and textures, and a really small pen gives really fine texture. But that is also something that people often forget. So even though it is completely logical. When we make art, sometimes we forget about the logical things. So the fact that you can make a color darker by adding some black to it. That is something that once you're in the middle of making a painting, you can completely forget about. So sometimes it's good to have a little reminder. So if you want to add fine details to a drawing, use a fine pen. The smaller the pen, the easier it is to add details. So, making sure that I'm a bit sharp again. See, slowly the drawing is coming together. It's not the most intricate drawing that I've ever made, but that's okay, because we're just sketchbooking. What time is it? I'll carry on a little bit longer. I think I want that background to be a little bit darker, and let me just quickly check. See, the paper is not shining through, the ink is not coming through on the other side. Sometimes when you use ink, the colors press through. This ink is quite dry and it doesn't press through to the other side. But that's not always the same. Sometimes it goes through a little bit. I think I'm going to make a slightly darker edge around the outside. So I'm using, this is also an ink pen. This is one that I use a lot, but this is a brush pen. And you can see the size of that line is much, much bigger than this one. I can also create fine lines with it. But for now, I just want that background to be a little bit darker. So, ooh, actually I have an idea. Maybe this could be a bit like an, so let me see, like an, like a slice of something. So I'm only going to add, so this is something that sometimes inspiration strikes you and then you change your idea around. So if I use sort of roughly that area, so there we go. So this is why it's good sometimes not to plan everything out, because sometimes you have an idea and then you want to execute it. It doesn't always work. Sometimes things go wrong a little bit and that is okay. So, and I draw in ink a lot. I make a lot of my larger artworks with ink as well. So, there we go. So I'm just adding a few little lines. A bit random, a bit dark. I think the contrast is always really important in any piece of art, but especially when you draw in black and white. You want to have enough contrast, because that contrast is the only thing that you have that shows depth, and that shows what you're doing. So don't be afraid to go in with a black pen and make some areas really dark. So brush pen is always a little bit dangerous because that line, because it is like a line, because there is a line variety, sometimes things can go wrong a little bit, and that's also okay. It's okay to take a risk and to try things that are a bit different from normal. I think I might add a few more details in here, so maybe this is like some plants. I didn't add any animals in, did I? But I think I won't. Actually, I could add a little sheep. So there we go. I think it looks quite fun. So you can add as many or as little things as you want. Maybe there's some pine trees here. So the more you doodling, the easier it becomes to add doodles to things, because you sort of start to take the pressure away, I always find. So I think I might be almost finished. I'm going to leave the hands just really simple like this. Although if I added some lines to that one, maybe I'll do the same here. So something else that combines really nice with ink, which I just want to quickly show you if I can, is an what is it that I added to the top? Sorry, Carol, I'm not quite sure what you mean. Should I zoom in a little bit so we can have a look? Maybe to the top of the mountains, is that what you mean? I just added a little bit of a snowy line. Oh, and this was just a blob. I was thinking maybe some bushes or some plants or something that could be. feel free to add in some things, maybe like a little church or like another building, or you can add in anything, more trees. By the cross, is it this thing? This is just a little tree bloppy thing. So the cross is, when you have a map, the cross is sort of where the treasure is hidden. That was the idea. I also added just some swirls to the background. Where was I? Oh yeah, something that you can do, which always works quite well, is if you have any grey, like a grey marker, which I do not have here ready. Let me quickly have a look. So if you this is just a children's marker from a set that I bought a little while ago. And grey, if you have a light grey, can really be a nice combination with that black ink. So just to add in a few shadows. And it's a little bit more subtle than black. So as you can see, so maybe here, these fingers here, they could have a bit of shadow. You don't need to add grey, it's just, people often forget that it's a possibility. So. See, it's quite subtle. Of course you can add color as well, but grey sort of still makes your drawing look like a black and white drawing, but then at the same time it can just add a little bit of extra depth to it. Without sort of leaving the black and white vibe. So, there we go. Just a few little fine details. So we have a bit of shadow here under that sheep. There we go. So let me zoom out and let's have a look at the whole paper and a bit more of my desk. Ooh, sorry, wobbly camera. There we go. A little Inktober artwork today. So this is how I approach a challenge like this. I know that the drawing isn't perfect, but I believe that perfection doesn't exist. And I thought it was a really fun little exercise just to show you how I come up with some ideas and then translate it into a little illustration. And having those ideas first makes a huge difference, I think. I don't know if you joined into that phase as well, but just to brainstorm a bit and to come up with an idea. Then by the time you're drawing it sort of for real, you don't have to think about it too much anymore because you already have a bit of a plan and it just makes it much easier to execute. So, and I think that counts for any drawing or artwork. If you wanted to make a painting of this now, you already have an idea and you could do that. Thank you so much for joining in, everyone. It's really lovely to see all of you here. Thank you so much for all your comments in the chat. I've not said hi to you yet, Elwinda, but really glad you enjoy drawing along. Really lovely to see all of you. The next live session on YouTube is next week at the same time. I'm sort of aiming to do this every Thursday. If something else happens, I usually send an email saying, oh sorry, I can't carry on for today. It's moved to a different day of the week, or sometimes something happens. But usually I'm trying to do this every Thursday. So yeah, make sure you subscribe to my channel. And if you are curious about the live session on Sunday, we are painting in watercolors. You can find all the details about the community on my website, which I've just linked in the chat. So make sure you look after yourself, and I will see everyone soon. So thank you so much for joining in. Bye bye.